We're recording.
Hello, fellow nerds.
So I'm hoping the audio levels are going to be okay, or this is going to be a take two.
Take 37.
Oh God, no.
Strike.
I can only listen to my voice for so long.
Yeah, I know. I've had to listen to it for like 8 years.
I hate you.
Shut up.
Anyway, as our first podcast, we wanted to do a video more so, but because of this whole thing going around, Amazon has kind of
Shut everything down.
yeah, they pretty much gotten everything to essentials only. So we thought, hey, I got a Zune H2N. Might as well set this up on our gaming table.
Product placement.
We might as well record some stuff. So the first topic, I thought would be kind of fitting, since you're going to be listening to us hopefully for a while, two nerds, is how we got into miniature wargaming, memorable moments, and some advice for new people.
Getting in, dealing with different issues, societal pressures, maybe individual pressures that you might feel when you start. Kind of those various types of things that you could deal with or encounter, because let's be real here, Corey. When you first start wargaming, that is a daunting task.
It is honestly very intimidating, especially when you're going on. Let's talk about obviously the elephant in the room here, GW Games Workshop. You look at their products, you look at their paintings, you look at their tables they have set up, and it's honestly can be pretty intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's especially for some people that really want to get into it. They look at how much it costs and setting up your first army.
Especially GW.
And yes, especially with them. But we have to address them. They're like the biggest name on the market. So it really deals with a lot of those different things. There's a lot that happens when you sit down and you pull up that website, because got to give credit to the are they still the heavy metal team? Is that what they're called? They're painters. I think
I'm not sure. I haven't followed them as closely nowadays as you have.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to sleep listening to fucking
40K lore.
40K lore. Yeah, that's not.
Well, it's either like 40K lore, Forgotten Weapons with Ian McCollum. I'm totally not plugging him at all. He's like Gun Jesus. Or I've also been listening to a lot of Elder Scrolls lore, so shut up. But credit where credit is due. The heavy metal team are absolutely amazing at the painting that they can do. So when you sit down and you look at these miniatures, and they're absolutely gorgeous, and then you sit there and you're like, I could never paint like that. Well, let me tell you, gentle listener, totally stealing that from Baltimore, by the way, that my first miniatures look like hot dog shit. Like, they were, I was proud of them because I painted them, but they didn't look good at all.
Right.
Now, my miniatures that I can put out now on tabletop quality look very nice, very presentable, they're very eye pleasing. And then I have, my magnum opus over there, the Space Marine, that isn't even close to done with 22 hours of painting into him. Don't be psycho like me.
Drives me up the fucking wall.
Shut up.
But we'll get into that stuff a lot later. So a little bit of introduction. Rick, why don't you go first about how you got into the tabletop hobby? Because I think you technically actually getting into it, I think you're before me.
I am. So first off, hi, I'm Rick. What's up? A little bit about myself, I think is probably a good idea to start with, just so people can understand that the demographics in this is astronomical.
Why? Because we got pretty much two opposite people here.
Yeah, just something like that. So a little bit about myself. I currently am a dealer at a small casino local to where we live. So I deal, like blackjack, poker, roulette, things like that. Work second shift, kind of a night guy. Play a lot of video games, read a lot of sci-fi, fantasy, and books and stuff. I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserves as an infantry rifleman. I did a lot with regards to that. I'm also hoping this summer, when all this passes over, to get back into competitive shooting. Very, very big into firearms myself. How to use them, their history, their mechanics, their engineering, things like that. With regards to these kinds of hobbies, I'm not a very artistic individual. Painting miniatures is about as close to art as I get, which some of my friends will yell and scream at me that is actually art. I'm just ridiculous, but I'm inclined to agree and disagree with them, but that's because of, I don't know, like, to me, I'm not an artsy kind of guy. This is just coloring in lines, but yell at me later. Now, there are some people's miniatures, though, that are just absolutely drop-dead gorgeous.
Like Duncan Rhodes.
Now, with regards to kind of what I do, like, I deal that. I've worked at a gun range before. I'm looking at going back to college for mechanical engineering at some point. Finish that up, so I went to a military college for that for 2 years. So that's a little bit about myself, just to kind of give you an idea of where I come from. Now, getting into miniature wargaming, how I got into it. I was just turned 16 years old, so about 11 years ago. Actually, yeah, I think it was in March, 11 years ago on the, so it was like March, April time frame. It was in March because April's when I started wargaming. In early March, my mother took me out to the local bookstore. It wasn't Books A Million back then. It was Borders.
Yeah.
She took me to a Borders. And because I had been well behaved, she was like, hey, we ran a bunch of errands today. Why don't you go pick yourself out a book? Go whatever you want, as long as it's not ridiculous. And I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. That sounds great. And I, run over to the sci-fi fantasy section because that's my favorite genres to read. And I was just browsing through it, and I found the Blood Angels omnibus by James Swallow from the Black Library series. I kind of picked it up and sitting there looking at the cover, and the art for that omnibus, in my opinion, is amazing. And it really captures... I have it upstairs in the room if you want to take a look at it. It really captures, in my opinion, what a Blood Angels tactical marine looks like in Warhammer 40,000. He is beat up and, looks like he's been through it because he's a space marine, constantly on the edge in the fight, but he still looks noble. He has a great bearing to him, He looks like he goes through war, but he's not lost himself to war kind of thing. And there's a lot of other things like that, because I grew up with stories about, knights and Spartans and Roman legionnaires and samurai and, the heroics of the Allies in World War II and such. So it really tugged at my heartstrings with that. Read the back of it, got the description, flipped to the preview or something in the beginning, brought it to my mom, and I'm like, can I get this? This looks awesome. She's like, I've never even heard of this. Had you? Nope, not at all. Promptly went home and read the first book of the 3 in there that night. I sat there and just read the whole first book because it's an omnibus, so I think there was 3 in that one. Now, I know the community has their what's and what's about that series by James Swallow, but I don't care. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's still one of my favorite books. And it drew me in. And then I just sat there with my laptop and I went, yo, I need to find more book series about this. What's going on with this? This universe is awesome. Googled Warhammer 40,000. Boom. There's Games Workshop website. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Pull it open. Boom. There's these gorgeous painted miniatures. What the hell? And I'm scrolling through and now I'm going through forums and I'm doing this, that, and the other. And I'm like, what is this? What's happening with this? This looks cool. Where do I get into this? Found a shop near me at the time because I lived over in Ware. It was in Concord. Collectibles Unlimited was the name of the little shop. Still around, I think. Pretty good people.
I think so. I think they're still around too.
And I kind of found them on Google. Went to my parents and I went, "Hey, there's apparently a miniatures war game that goes along with this, where you build and paint minis. There's a shop in Concord. I don't have school today. I'm going to go over there and find out what's what." They were like, yeah, go. Have fun. You know, take your cell phone, whatever. Drove on down, met some of the older people. You know, at the time, again, I was 16, so, you know, these 32-year-olds showing me what's what. Roll in, there's a bunch of adults hanging around, moving these miniatures across the board, yelling at each other and having a grand old time, rolling dice, meow meow, go away. And it just kind of started there. You know, and they took me over to the wall full of minis, and they're like, so this is this is that. You know, and I was like, hey, I really want to pick something up to get started tonight. You know, put some minis together. I want to play Blood Angels. I read the book. You know, what do I do? And they're like, well, you know, we don't have the codex in at the moment. It should be in at this day. I'll set one. You know, the store owner, Mr. Body, super cool dude. Set a copy of the codex. Make sure to set one aside for me for when it came in. I grabbed a box of Blood Angels, Death Company. Because it's like a required, because the new codex was coming out. It wasn't out yet. But in the previous codexes, you had to take Death Company. So they're like, you were going to have to take some of these guys.
What edition was
Take
this?
them. Fifth.
I
Back
honestly
in
don't.
fifth.
I don't remember what the hell we started with.
We started back in 5th edition. And 5th edition was still kind of new when I started. So I bought a box of them. Went home with them. I bought a thing of plastic cement. Went home. My parents gave me a pair of clippers and an X-Acto knife, and there I went.
Just like the dogs.
Yeah, exactly like that. And there I went. And ever since then, I've been doing this, and now, oh Lord, the amount of games I have miniatures for.
Yeah, but now I surpassed you. Funny enough, with my story,
Yeah.
I've surpassed you in the number of miniature games I play.
For now.
For now. So my story. My name's Corey. Hi. I am not a Marine. I am what you would call a computer and history nerd. Went to school for IT. Yeah, and just wanted to do. My other option was a history teacher, but kind of went with computers because I felt that was more of my calling. My background with miniature wargaming actually started probably when I was in 5th grade, and my buddy introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. This is around 2000. My buddy, on the playground, we started all playing, well, I use playing with air quotes, Dungeons and Dragons. And I absolutely love the idea of table. I always enjoyed board games, but the freedom you had in D&D really sealed the deal for me. And then when I was a freshman in in high school, I came across some friends. Unfortunately, I lost touch with them. God, hey.
Sorry, guys. We have 75-pound pit bull and a, what is she, 80 pounds now? 70-pound Malamute. They like to roughhouse. So if you hear the dogs in the background, that's our pooches.
Yeah.
The pit bull is Siggy and the Malamute is Misha. They're both girls, and they're ornery, and they're spoiled brats, and I love them.
Pain in the ass.
Anyway, so spoiled.
I met some friends there at the time, and we were all we met through a computer class. I don't recall what class it was. It might have been web design, but we were all sitting together, and we all got our project done. We were supposed to be done that day. And then my buddy pulls up the Games Workshop website for Warhammer Fantasy. And I look over it and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I was like, oh, this is Warhammer Fantasy. I'm like, okay, go on.
Continue.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, I didn't grow up in the wealthiest family, so the most I could do is just drool over these gorgeous miniatures, and Um, I think my pal will someday actually build a Skaven army. Just because that's the one that actually I believe army that sealed the deal for me was just these just piles of ratmen on the table. Which is why I'm probably always into the Horde army for most games.
You always play Horde armies.
Yes. Which I'll get to in a second. And then I didn't get into it because I knew no one else. I couldn't get the miniatures for it. Didn't know anyone else really that played it. So it just was kind of just left at the wayside. Until I graduated high school. And we had a club at the school called the Anime Gamers Club.
By the way, we went to the same high school.
Yeah, well, which is what we're getting at, which is actually, funny enough, how we both get into miniature wargames is how him and I became very good friends.
Yes.
Is we had a club called the Miniature Wargaming.
No, miniature video games.
No,
Anime Gaming Club. We're confusing ourselves.
Right. It's exactly like it sounds like. It was a bunch of nerds and weebs. But there was always a tradition where the seniors that graduated would show up a couple times at the beginning, to see old friends and whatnot. The school allowed us to do it. And I went one time, and one of my buddies, I forget who, it could have been Taylor.
No, Taylor got into it after we did.
Yeah?
Because we got Taylor into it.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but it was one of my old buddies from high school. He was like, "Hey man, you gotta meet this new kid, Rick. He's a huge nerd also, and is interested in Warhammer just like you." Granted, at the time, I didn't really know about 40K that well. I've only really was digging deep into fantasy, and then of course I met you. And then you pulled out the 5th edition rule book.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, holy shit, this is cool. I need to get into this. And that's where my love for it really started. Unfortunately, my story is 2 parts because I got into 40K. I did Tau. I did... Tau.
Chaos Space Marines.
Chaos Space Marines was my big one for a while.
Because you did Nurgle.
Yep, Papa Nurgle. Good old Papa Nurgle. What else did I do? I did Orcs and I did Grey Knights.
Yes.
Unfortunately, after that, that's when I went to college and I lost a lot of contacts with people. This is when you were at... It was a little after... This is about the time where you just started going to college as well, I believe.
Yeah, when I went to Norwich.
Yeah, it's right when all the high school buddies went and we lost in touch, and I was like, okay, everyone, and this is also when we got into War Machine as well.
Yes.
So War Machine and 40K were our big ones. Of course, during college, everyone goes away, and we're like, okay, well, this sucks. I spent all this money on miniatures and stuff like that, and then just like a drop of the hat, everyone's gone and done. So, kind of regretting it, but I sold all my armies.
You kept something.
I kept Kador for the longest time.
Yeah, from War Machine.
But they were literally just in a shoebox stuffed in the deepest, darkest corners of the basement.
Yeah, because we would play...
Like,
we stopped playing 40K when we went to we went to college because you got out of 40K because it wasn't worth keeping. I stayed in 40K because I had a club up there that we played 40K at. But you got out of 40K, but you kept your War Machine, and I kept mine because it was such a small game comparatively.
Yeah, but my Kador was... I collected Kador, so I had, if everyone's familiar with old War Machine, the Kadoran Death Star...
I hated that unit so much.
I had a full Death Star. I even had what's his name? The huge guy. He's now a Panzer mech.
Yeah, the behemoth,
Conquest.
Colossal Conquest. Yeah,
Conquest.
You got real into it, but you were working at the time, so
yeah,
you had some spare cash.
I'm still pissed. I'm the only one that picked up
The Colossal.
a Colossal,
Well, I
and we were
told you,
all.
I didn't have the money to.
Well, I think that was the issue with it, is that the expansion was the biggest thing in the expansion. You had to get the book, which I think the book was like $30-$40.
Yes.
And then you also, everyone fucking wanted one. You got the Colossal, which was
$140.
yeah, it was about 140, I think. So it was a huge chunk of change to get.
It was super cool, but it was really expensive.
But everyone I went up against, I used it, and literally that would be my entire army. Would be him and a Warcaster, essentially.
Yep.
Because I was like, I just really want to play this model. They're like, yeah, dude, I'm not playing with that thing again, because that thing just rocked. Because that thing, if you rolled correctly, it created difficult terrain.
Yes, because it had that one gun.
2 guns.
But
the guns in the shoulders, I believe.
The shoulder guns are something else.
The
top one was that artillery piece.
Yeah. The top one created rough terrain.
Yeah, it was dumb. So what happened with that was when we got into 40K together, when I got Corey into 40K, we had another mutual friend of ours, Taylor. We got him into 40K, and Jake Fellows as well. If you remember Jake, the younger kid. And then who was the other guy who moved away? Harry. That's right. Harry had kind of gotten into it on his own and then ran across us and went, "Yo!"
Yeah, pretty much.
So we started playing, and we went to my house once, and we'll not get into that one, but we'd meet.
No, I want to get into that one because that's when your brother was an idiot and set your tactical squad in the middle of the table in front of my Death Dread, and
I told him not to.
You're like, don't do that.
Don't
Do that.
Don't
and
do it.
I'm here like the evil raccoon twiddling my fingers.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna drop a pie plate on this fucking squad. Oh, do they get an armor set? No, they don't.
No. What do you mean they just died, Jake? I tried to warn you. Not Jake Fellows. There were 2 Jakes. My little brother's name is Jake. So, but we would meet up at each other's basements or Taylor's house or the gaming club, and we'd play. Once in a while, a couple of us would go to Collectibles Unlimited to play when we had the time.
Game Castle was another big one back then, too.
Yeah, you and Taylor. I never went to Game Castle. You and Taylor would
Taylor
go.
and I did a... So, Game Castles was... they got bought out recently, but... They used to do 2v2 tournaments there.
Yeah.
This was right... and people are probably going to bitch about this. This was right when Grey Knights were released.
I remember that.
And do you remember who the codex was written by?
Yep. Matt Ward.
Because everything Matt Ward touches becomes broken.
And the lore gets all messed up. It was... Anyways. Without going into bad rants about that.
Us being dirty people, I played my Terminator Grey Knight list, and he did his heavy artillery support Imperial Guard.
Yeah. That was disgusting to watch.
So if you could imagine about, how many was it? I think it was like 20, 30 Terminators.
So to explain to those who might not know, Terminators are basically these giant genetic engineered badasses called Space Marines. And now you're taking them, right? They're like 10 feet tall, and they can literally crush your head with their bare hand. Now you're putting them in, normally they get in power armor. So think like Master Chief's armor.
No,
I'm getting there. Mjolnir from Halo on like crack and
I would
steroids.
think more like the Hulkbuster from Marvel.
Yeah, well, that's more like a Terminator armor. That's where I was going after that. It's like power armor takes Master Chief from Halo's Mjolnir armor to like the nth degree, and then Terminator armor just sits there like, hold my beer.
And of course, so this is why I fell out of a lot of Games Workshop stuff also, because GW is incredibly expensive because you're paying $50 for 5 Terminator models.
Yeah.
So imagine you needing 20 to 30 of them for a Grey Knight Terminator list.
Yeah, so
because you can actually take... They were, I think, the only faction you could take Terminators as a troop choice and not an elite.
One of 2.
Who was the other one?
The other one was Deathwing for the Deathwing sub faction for Dark Angels.
Yeah, but no one ran fucking Dark Angels.
They did later when
No, I
Deathwing
think
got a
Harry
huge
ran
revamp.
Dark Angels.
Yeah, he ended up running
but
Dark Angels.
But he did the bikers. The
Yeah,
speed
he went
variant.
with Ravenwing.
Yeah.
So anyways, basically Corey was a dirty whore, and he played ridiculously powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, just imagine 20 to 30 Terminators with Caldo Drago, a Raven gunship, and then behind them was 3. What were the artillery pieces for the IG? Not basilisks.
Yeah, the Basilisk was the standard artillery piece.
Was it the artillery? I thought that was the Chimeras of transport.
Yeah, the Chimeras of transport. Yeah, it was dumb.
So behind them was a couple Lehman Russes,
and artillery,
and a couple basilisks, and then Chimeras full of troop. It was, yeah,
it was dirty. But so, anyways, back to the story.
That was actually the first army actually fully magnetized.
Yes, it was
because
the weapons.
The amount of weapons you could give a Grey Knight was stupid. Regular force sword and shield. You got the
you had the
falchions.
regular force sword. There was no shield. You had the dual falchions. You had the stave, and you had the halberds
and hammers.
And hammers.
So
yeah, it was. Anyways,
and they gave you enough pauldrons and arms to do everything
because they knew what they were doing. But anyways,
of course, this was back when they were just doing fine casts.
Anyway, back to the story, Corey. We're deviating, and our poor listeners are just sitting there like jargon. Anyways, so we went to college, and we kept up with War Machine for a little bit. But then I kept playing 40K when Corey kind of stopped playing while we were in college. And then Corey had to leave college due to family issues, right? Was it?
Yep.
I left college after 2 years because I suddenly found myself homeless for 2 years. That was not fun. And then I was with my ex-fiance at the time. And then I went to boot camp for the Marine Corps, then infantry training. When I came home, I moved in with my ex. Corey and I kind of kept in contact, but I kept working on my minis, but not a lot. I never really had time to go to my store because my work was being awful and they wouldn't give me the time to go. Yep. You know, the one day you remember when I worked at the range. The one day I wanted a week off, they wouldn't give me, or like the evening off, still wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when she left me and just like left and moved out same day, Corey and I ended up getting a apartment together.
Yep. And
I was still kind of toddling with my minis, not really doing much. You were completely out.
I was completely out. At this point I nearly sold all my 40K stuff. I think. I let you have. I said to you, "Hey, I'm throwing these up on eBay. Do you want any first?"
Yeah.
And I think you took a couple rhinos from my Chaos Space Marines, and I think that was it.
It was about. I think I grabbed a couple of Chaos Space Marines or something.
Yeah, because you could literally just clip the pointy bits off the rhino and just make
It's a rhino.
Yeah.
And then, so he was out of it. I was kind of toddling around. We eventually moved into a house on the other side of town, and we were living here for a little bit. And then I ended up dating Crow for a while. Her and I started dating, and then she moved in because she found herself homeless at one point.
Mm.
And that's when I went to you, and because Justin was living with us at the time. And I went to you, and Justin was like, "Hey, help." Y'all were super cool about that. So she moved in, and she was working at a shop, and somebody came to her and told her about Adler Hobby. The Adler Nest, which was like a 10-minute walk down the road from our house.
Yeah, it was like 10, 15 minutes. Only a few blocks.
And she knew I was big into the minis and everything like that. I just didn't have anywhere to go. Ooh, excuse me, because my next job wasn't giving me the time to go. And so it was just an issue. And then she heard about them and took me down there. And that's when I met Gore. She took Justin and I down first. And that's when I met Gordon, who runs Adler Hobby. Owns Adler Hobby, I should say. And I just kind of wandered around the store and was talking to Gordon. Gordon was telling me everything. I'm like, oh my God, I love 40K. And he's like, well, yeah, but I haven't played in a while. He's like, yeah, like all of us. We all start with 40K and then it's really expensive and we find other games that are about all kinds of other stuff and we keep going with these other ones that are not nearly as expensive, such as Bolt Action, Hail Caesar, Black Powder, Pike and Shot, Gates of Antares. Those are all by Warlord Games. Warlord is a big one of what we play. They're the next big one. And then there's a bunch of like minor rule sets that you can get into from Osprey Publishing and stuff.
Osprey Blue Books.
Yep. So, took us down there, and I came home. We came home, and I was just like, Corey, dude, no, you need to come down. You need to come down to Adler Hobby.
And I was adamant
that he wasn't going to.
I was like, no, I'm not getting into that money sinkhole again.
Not doing it. I was like, well, Corey, they got Dungeons and Dragons stuff down there too. Fine, I'll go check it out. And I was like, haha, got you.
No, what actually got me down was you were at work and Crow was like, hey, do you mind picking me up from Adler? And I was like, fine, okay.
Yeah, because she used to go hang out there after work when I wasn't home.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay. So I go in and I'm like, okay. So, hey, I'm almost done. Do you mind just sitting down and waiting for a few seconds? And Gordon and I got talking, and then he put the proverbial bug in my ear because I told him I was a huge history nerd. He was like, oh, like, we're just starting a league for Bolt Action. And I was like, what's Bolt Action? He was like, oh, it's a World War II tabletop game. And I'm like, sir, you had my curiosity, you now have my attention. And I went from, nope, I will not get into another fucking tabletop hobby
Ever again,
to doing Bolt Action, Black Powder, Hail Caesar, Kill Team. I'm currently in the process of building a old Warhammer 6th edition fantasy army.
Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here grinning like a Cheshire cat.
Yeah.
He's like a crackhead. So, and that's kind of like what revitalized the hobby for us, and we've been real big into
it was also that, and that place, there was a consistent place to play.
Yes.
There was a consistent place and a consistent Facebook group where we could post and say, hey, I'm looking for a game.
On this day, this time frame, and you could generally get a game.
Because honestly, that was the biggest thing for me. If there wasn't a consistent place to play, I would have not gotten back in.
Yeah.
I would have started maybe a small force or two, like with Kill Team, just for almost like a board game ask, like, hey, you want to try something different type deal.
Yeah.
But I think actually finding a consistent place to play with awesome people, which I think is another big thing.
Yes. We'll get into that later.
That really sealed the deal for me. And now I'm even a Warlord Sergeant.
Which is kind of like a representative for the brand.
Yeah.
Like, he goes out and,
demos and
runs demos, things like that, and they...
Yeah, ask me a question, I'll be more than happy to answer it with you.
Yeah, ask me a question, I'll ask you.
Words are hard.
Yeah, I know. Neither of us were English majors. So, and then they give him, like, points, and he can get, like, free miniatures and stuff like that in return, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I went from... I will never get into another fucking tabletop game to...
Holy God.
Let me help you get into one. So I went from the crack addict to essentially the crack dealer.
Hooked on his own stuff.
I did not obey the laws.
And then I am into several games as well.
Your ever-growing pile of shame over here.
Shut up. Hey, I've started to paint. Back off. All right? My mental health issues got in the way. Leave me alone. And the Marine Corps, which is kind of both.
But yeah.
Yes, gentle listener. I got out of the Marine Corps in December, as in, like, 4 months ago. So,
But yeah, that's how we essentially got into tabletop games. I mean, it's awesome. The group of people is awesome, which I think is definitely
it's a huge deal.
a huge plus. Because I'm going into the topic of getting into it. I will say this right now: you will encounter those people.
Always. And it's not even just this hobby. Like, let's be real. You're going to encounter those people no matter what you do in your life. There's always going to be those people. So don't worry too much about encountering that in the hobby. Yes, they suck. We all know. But you'll encounter them everywhere. It's just a given. It's just going to happen. So don't let that stop you. Don't let bad people stop you.
Oh, I'll say this right now. If you're thinking about going into it, just go to your nearest game store and just start talking to people.
Yeah.
This is a hobby where no matter of what walk of life or career path you're on, as soon as you walk through those doors, you instantly have a common thing.
Absolutely.
Instantly have a common thing, and this is a hobby where everyone is super friendly, and almost everyone will be more than happy to give you advice on to get started. I think that's mainly a lot to do because it's a face-to-face hobby.
Yes.
Like you're going to be sitting on the other side of someone, on the other side of the table,
moving
with
these
someone.
little plastic minis around and throwing dice and laughing and comparing stats. The other thing about it as well is that it's a hard to navigate hobby on your own. And everybody who does this hobby knows that. Everyone knows that. So they will more than happily help you get into it and steer you around and make sure you're good. Now, obviously, there's going to be some people who are going to be like, you should totally play this one. Blah, 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 blah. Do your thing, but definitely take the advice. We got real lucky with that, though, let's be honest.
Yeah. Like my first advice when someone comes to me and saying, hey, what bolt action army should I run? Bolt Action, again, is the World War II tabletop game by Warlord Games.
It's a historical World War II.
Yeah. They would come to me and say, hey, what armies are top right now? What's this? What's that? And I'm just like, just go with what you want. Just pick the army that appeals to you the most. Because if you're painting stuff that you're not going to like, you're not going to end up painting it.
Right.
Which also leads to my first bit of advice, really, is go into a store.
Find a store near you. You can
whether it be a Games Workshop, Warhammer 40K, Age of Sigmar, go into the store, because more often than not, you're going to meet people there, especially the owners, that are going to be more than helpful and will help you go through and get your foot through the first door to getting into this hobby.
Absolutely. And another big thing is, so let's say you're just starting out this hobby, or you want to look into a new game if you've already been in this hobby or something like that. Instead of returning players, things like that. Instead of just jumping out and buying the rule books and buying the minis and everything like that, go to the store. See if there's even a community that plays the game there. If not, maybe drum up some interest if you're a veteran player. That's one thing.
Or you can find a completely new game that interests you.
Absolutely. But play the game first. Most miniature wargamers are more than willing to let you borrow an army to try a game out while you're there.
Absolutely.
Not like take it home with you, borrow, but like you show up to the store, a lot of guys bring in a couple of forces with them just in case a new player shows up. Yeah, and they're like, hey, you want to try this? Here's some dice. Here's what you need. Here's the miniatures.
Miniature wargamers always have enough dice, but
always have enough dice.
This is a personal preference for me, is when I get into a game, I immediately pick two factions I want. Just so, if someone happens to come through the door and wondering how the game's played, or if it's a buddy who's interested in it, I'll have two forces I can show off. And of course, it's always nice to switch back and forth between factions.
Right, keep it fresh for yourself.
Yeah. So I always build a minimum of 2 forces for an army.
Right. And they're more than willing to show you the ropes, teach you what's going on, so really see if you even enjoy playing the game.
Yep. Like Black Powder Sundays at Adler.
Yes.
Like, we just want people to come down. It's like, and then people are like, oh, I don't want to paint something. I'm like, we're not telling you to build an army. We're not telling you to paint. Just show up. We have more than enough lead for you to push around.
Yeah.
More than enough.
Pewter.
Pewter used to be lead, plastic, what have you. We got more than enough of it for you to come down. Even if that's your thing, that you don't want to build an army, but you really like the game, come on every Sunday down. Feel free to push my stuff around.
Yeah. and that's where the gaming community becomes the biggest part of the adventure.
Right.
I will say.
And honestly, it's the only way to let for it to grow as well.
Absolutely.
If you're being standoffish and rude and snobbish to new people coming through the door, one, that store is gonna lose business, not gonna be good. And two, the hobby's not going to grow. Because let's be honest here. Rick and I are over in New England, which is the northeast part of the United States. It's fairly big here, but not as big over in the UK. And it's still a niche hobby.
Yes.
It's
I say I play
absolutely a niche.
tabletop miniature war games to people that I'm talking to. Unless they know me, a lot of them sit there and are like, what's that? I've never heard of that. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm sitting there like, well, I build armies of miniatures and I paint them and I push them around the table and I'm a nerd, leave me alone. And they're like,
I paint small plastic men and I push them around the table.
and I make them go pew 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 at each other with dice and statistics and complicated rule sets. And it's a lot of fun. Like, no, really, it's a lot of fun. And they're like, yeah, And I'm like, look, I'm a nerd. First of all, that always gets weird looks because, I'm 6 foot tall and built like a brick shithouse. And they're like, yeah, And I'm like, no, seriously, I'm a nerd. Ask my coworkers. I'm a nerd. And they're like, yep, he is. And, so I still get a lot of like, what are you talking about kind of looks. So you need to be friendly with that. But yeah, anyways, so though the gaming club is or community near you is always willing to help and get you started.
And some have specific days set up for demos.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just go into your local game store and ask them about events.
You are always now on the that guy topic. Every store has them. Every community has them. You will encounter them. Do not let them deter you. We have one who shall not be named, out of a sense of propriety. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. However, he keeps showing up. He hasn't done anything wrong enough to get himself banned from the store, but almost none of us like playing with him, and he knows that.
He's getting better, though.
He is getting better. I will give credit where credit is due. But, when you ask people and they're like, oh, I'd love to, wreck that army, so-and-so plays that army. Well, and then the rest of us are like, well, we don't want to wreck that army because it's that army in that case. We want to wreck it because he's playing that army. And he's a what's called a power gamer, so his lists are only meant to just auto win button. Like, put them on the table, he wins. That's how... So, we all know this guy, but he still shows up and plays. And we have worked with him because, again, our community is really good. And as Corey said, he's improving, and he is. Because the community is really cool, we're trying to help him so that when he shows up, he automatically gets a game. Because, like, if Corey or I walk through the door with an army of whatever game, if other people have that army there, they'll play. I just be like, hey, you want to play? They'll be like, yeah, let's go. Like, no hesitation, let's get to play, because they like us. But this individual has a hard time sometimes. And as much as I don't like him because of his personality, I do feel bad that he's in the hobby and he has a hard time getting a game, which is why we try to work with him and see what we can do about that. Because, he's just there to have fun. And yeah, maybe his fun is at our expense, but that's why you talk to him and work with him.
Yeah, this hobby. Well, I say again, it's very niche. Majority of people are very welcoming and open arms to actually have you come in. Because no one, if you want advice, people will throw fucking buckets of advice up at you.
Oh yeah, ask a question, you'll get 12 different answers, and most of them are usually pretty good.
Like I go on the Bolt Action Reddit a lot. A lot of people there are pretty friendly. I'm not sure if you've been into the 40K ones at all, or
No, I stay away from the forums
like
nowadays.
Bolter and Chainsword. Is that what it is?
Yep, Bolter and Chainsword's still around. I used to be big into Bolter and Chainsword, I should say, and I've kind of fallen the wayside from forums and such. I mean, I don't even really post on my social media anymore. I
Right.
just kind of scroll through it for funny memes when I'm waiting for something. I do use it for the hobby though. Like I read through what are people playing, when are they going to be there, those kinds of things.
Also, another thing that came to mind is YouTube now. But back when you and I started, YouTube was pretty much
Barely a thing.
was pretty much just in its infancy.
Yeah.
And now, if you're interested in a game, and like you don't have a club near you, or your club's an hour away, and so it's a hit or miss. If you want to get in to a certain game, you can just go to YouTube now, type in like Bolt Action Battle Report. What is Bolt Action? What is Black Powder?
Etc. etc. War Gods of Egyptus.
Oh god, that's an obscure one.
Dust 1947.
Yeah,
Infinity. Etc. 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 We could go on for hours. Trust us.
So yeah, YouTube's another very good one.
It's an excellent tool.
It's excellent to always, like for me, if I'm looking into another World War II rule set for my Soviets or my Fallschirmjägers, and I want to know what I'm getting into, I'll look up reviews of that rule set, and see how it is. Is that something I want to play? Like the one I really want to get into is called What a Tanker.
Yeah.
It's a small rule set made by one dude, and his company is called Two Fat Lardies over in the UK.
I love it. Also, how-to tutorials, how to put these together, how to use green stuff, which is like a modeling putty that dries.
It's like a two-part epoxy putty.
How to paint skin tones. Dark skin tones, light skin tones. How to.
That goes into a next piece of advice. Don't kick yourself too hard, because everyone, when they first start, is going to suck at painting.
Full stop.
You are going to suck at it. But again,
I mean, unless you do painting outside of it,
right?
You're some kind of savant or something when you pick it up. There are exceptions to that rule, but what he's saying is absolutely correct. When you first start with miniatures and you first put paintbrush to paint to miniature, it's not going to look good, and that's fine. Nobody is going to rail on you for having badly painted minis, quote unquote.
Will jokingly rail at you for not painting.
Shut up, Corey. But nobody's going to sit there and be like, oh, it's an ugly miniature. They're going to be like, dude, you painted a miniature. That's awesome. And if you sit there and you're like, hey, man, I'm trying to get better, they'll be like, okay. And they're not going to generally not going to rail on you because your miniature's not well painted. They're going to sit there and be like, all right, man, hey, so you're trying to do skin tones. Maybe do this, maybe do that. When you sit down to first paint your miniatures, most people aren't going to know to thin their paints with a little bit of water. Yeah, I didn't know that for years.
And then you get stuff into glazes, inks, washes,
zenithal highlighting, hard edge highlighting. So those skills that we just listed, those painting styles, or I'm not sure, techniques, are some of the more advanced kinds of things, but you'll learn them as you go. Start out with Gordon's rule, 3 colors. Get 3 different colors on the miniature. Paint their clothing or armor.
I think you got that from it's old GW tournament standards.
Yeah.
3 colors and basing.
Yep.
Just worry about that.
But you want to do like clothing or armor, weaponry, and like a helmet or something else. Something, and you get 3 colors on the mini. Basing is something you can even do later. Let's be honest. Just worry about getting the mini, put together
Basing
on there.
is honestly where I have
3
the most
colors.
fun.
Basing is a lot of fun. 3 colors on them, and boom, you got a painted army. You put them on the table. The other thing you guys got to remember, this is something I'm still trying to keep in mind for myself. When you are looking at these painted miniatures, you're generally looking at them from arm's distance or longer.
Yeah.
They're on a table that you are standing or sitting at.
With 20 to 80 other miniatures
on the table.
On the minute. Yeah. This is coming from someone who has painted nearly 5 brigades of Napoleonics.
Now, a brigade is a lot of troops.
Let's see. 1 brigade alone, you need, 4 bases.
This is going to sound like a lot. This is kind of an extreme level.
Yeah. So 1 infantry unit is 4 bases. Each base has 4 dudes on it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a lot of painting.
But, again, their arm's length are greater. They don't need to be perfect. They're not being judged for an award. You don't need to show up and be Monet.
Yeah, you're not going for a golden demon or a crystal brush. You're just, hey, they look good on the table. Yay,
I'm
me.
happy. Yay. And, yeah, they don't need to look so good when you pick them up and you look at them. You're like, oh, what's with this hairline misstroke? Nobody's going to look at them like that unless you ask them to. Or they want to, hey, can I look at your mini? Just to hey, that's really cool. Or, how did you do that? Nobody's going to pick it up and care. Yeah, there's going to be the dickheads on the internet being dickheads on the internet. But your average gamer is just going to be happy that there's a painted miniature that,
or having a new person to play against.
Yeah, they'll just be happy that they get to play the game. The painting makes the game look more appealing. It's a lot more fun when it's 2 painted armies on the table. But it's not necessary to play, and playing's the most important part.
A lot of us, especially starting a new game, you'll see a lot of just bare plastic and metal or just primed miniatures on the table.
Because our biggest concern is pushing around miniatures and rolling dice.
Pretty much.
Having fun. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you, actually, with this hobby. Have fun.
Yeah.
This is a hobby. This isn't a job. This isn't, 90-something% of us are never going to make money off of this. You're not doing this for other people necessarily. Have fun. That is the most critical part. When you sit down and you make a list for these games, make a list that you enjoy. Make a list that you have fun with. Plan an army that suits your taste. It doesn't have to be the most powerful list the game can field unless you're going to a competition.
Yep. Well, that's the thing with me is
tournament.
I've played so much competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! In college.
Mm-hmm.
Not proud of that, but in a lot of competitive 40K, and I'm now seriously just sick of competitiveness.
Yeah.
I just wanted to field the weirdest goddamn army you'd see that would be fun for my opponent. Because there's a book coming out now for Bolt Action. Again, that's a World War II rule set focused on the Battle of Stalingrad. In that book, there is an all-cavalry list. I will have an all-cavalry Soviet list, so help me God.
Yeah.
I do not care that it's going to get shredded by machine guns and tanks with autocannons, but I'm going to feel fun as hell charging across the goddamn table with 30 to 40 mounted infantry.
Absolutely. And you know me, I'm known for reading the lore of any game I get into. So the sci-fi games, the fantasy games, blah, blah, blah. I read the background, I read the lore. I find a piece of that I enjoy a lot, and I build an army around it. Yeah, a lot of times it's not a competitive list, it's not a powerful list, but I build a list that when I sit there and I look at it, it's cool. It's fun. It's really wild. I'm also, Corey can attest, I'm well known for showing up to the table to play a list and using certain units way outside of the context that they're supposed to be used in quotation marks, and nobody knows how to react to it. Like, hey Rick, that unit is, an assault unit. You're supposed to jump it in and smack somebody in the face with it. They don't really have any ranged weapons. Well, I decided to actually use it as a mobile fire support. Have fun with that. You're using it as a what? Yeah, I moved it over there just to shoot at you. Why would you do that? So I can do this. Rick, what the hell? And it's like, I'm very well known for doing things like that because it's fun. And, if you show up and you guys don't really know the rules too well, whatever. Maybe look it up. Maybe don't. Maybe come to a consensus. Maybe roll a die. You think it's one way, he thinks it's another way. Roll a die. Flip a coin.
Also, I think another big thing is don't be afraid to make mistakes.
At all.
The rule books, like some of our rule books, look intimidating, but I'll tell you right now, a lot of the rules is only a small section. Everything else is a special condition, essentially. And you will certainly make mistakes in rules, or even painting.
Yeah. And that's, you learn from them. Learn from it. And so what if you make a bad maneuver and you lose a game? It's a game. It's like any other game, playing a board game, playing checkers, playing Call of Duty, and you go in and things don't go well and you lose. Yay, whatever. You don't have to have a 10-1 record. You're not going pro here. It's a hobby. I mean, if you're at a tournament, yeah, you got to make sure you do it completely right every time to win the tournament, but...
Yeah, but there's also a big difference between jumping into a tournament and just showing up at your friendly local game store on Friday nights looking for a game.
Absolutely. And that's where the differences come from, is you're just looking to play a game with each other. You don't always have to win. Do you want to win? Yeah. Yeah, you do. But I have the most fun, personally, when I sit down and I play a game and it's a slugfest.
Yeah.
You don't even know who's going to win. One moment you're winning, next moment that guy's winning. Like, your opponent's winning. It's just back and forth and back and forth. Nobody steamrolls over anybody. It's just hard.
There's been, I think I have a couple pictures on my phone. If I could find them, I'll put them up. But there's been a couple times where it was literally down to 2 single models.
Yep.
It's been surprisingly like that a couple times. It's a couple times in Bolt Action, and then there was a couple times in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Which is the Game of Thrones game.
Yeah. Which is affectionately called Alphabet Thrones in our group.
You're welcome.
Where it literally came down, and those are honestly my favorite ones. Of course, this is me coming from the masochistic horde player.
Yep.
So just to give you an idea, if you're an old 40k player, you'll recognize the term Green Tide. The Green Tide. So back in the day, I cleared out 4 local game stores of all their orcs. Because my Green Tide orc list was 120 boys, 9 kilocans, a weird boy, I'm trying to remember from forever ago, a boss, probably 20-something Luda, I think.
Yep. By the way, I hated you.
That was a fun list. So this is probably where, going on a side tangent here, probably where my love for horde armies come with. Because I probably right now have, around 80 Soviets painted up for Bolt Action. And I'm just starting the Chinese for Bolt Action.
Yep.
Which again is another horde army. And I just got in the mail another 60 models for my Chinese.
Yep. Now, another difference between Corey and I right there. Corey plays horde armies. He loves playing the big armies with the cheap models that die by the droves.
But god damn it, I will push a lot of fucking plastic around, and I will have fun doing that.
Meanwhile, I am what's referred to as an elite player. I play small, hard to kill, heavy hitting elite lists. I don't like losing infantry. I don't like losing things.
Me, on the other hand, is like, oh, 10 guys died? Whatever.
Yeah, meanwhile for me, I sit there and it's like, the glorious last stand! And there's like, I only have like 5 dudes for his 20, but it's still an even fight because the capability of my 5 dudes is ridiculous.
I think it also plays in a lot of that bolt action's a fairly balanced game, at least in our store.
Yes.
But our store, Adler Hobby, we're a fairly laid back group.
Yeah, we're just there to have fun.
Like the one list I really want to feel for bolt action is the new tank factory coming out, the tractor factory list.
Yeah, we're like,
where it's just literally just random factory workers with rifles and half done T-30 476s.
yeah,
I mean,
it's so stupid.
we all looked at that list and we're like, yeah, that's going to be a shitty list. And I looked at it and like, but I really want to play it.
Yeah, I want to do this.
I currently have 16 partisans painted up, and I got another 8 to go to complete that army list. So it's just one of those things, again, going back to have fun with it. I'm like, yeah, that list says that looks fucking stupid, but you know what? It's going to be fun to play.
Yeah. And you know, like, how big is a 500, how many models, just as a for instance, how many models is a 500-point Soviet list for bolt action for you?
So right off the bat, you get a free squad of 12 guys.
Well, just one of your 500-point lists. Don't like go into the breakdown of how to make it. Just like how many models is one approximately?
Probably 30 to 40. Because you have to take the free squad. You get the free squad.
Yep.
You need a base of 2 infantry.
The leader.
Your HQ choice. Maybe a armored car light tank, and then a crew weapon, a team weapon. So you're probably looking 30 to 40 unit models out, I say.
Meanwhile, I play the U.S. Marine Corps, surprising no one, for bolt action, and my list was 29, 22, 25, 27 miniatures, 28 miniatures. Because, again, I play the heavy-hitting, hard-to-kill guys. You know, I could easily play the U.S. Marine Corps with a lot more models on the table, but I choose to play the more elite lists. And that's where I have fun, you know, is crafting these brilliant tactical plans and using these things to the bleeding edge of what they can do, or just not at all what they can do, and throwing a loop in my buddies' plans when they're sitting there like, Rick, that's not how that works. I'm like, yes, I know these are snipers, but currently they're stabbing you. And you have to deal with that. So that's and that kind of ties into getting into the game, is get into it and find what you enjoy. Find what you like to play. Find an army that matches how you feel. Oh.
Or it could be not so much as play as I like the look.
Yes, and that's another very important point. If you don't like what your army looks at, you don't even want to look at them, let alone paint them, let alone play a game with them. Like, just how it is. If you think an army is ugly, you know, that's one ugly grasshopper. You ain't going to play that grasshopper. You ain't going to put it together. You ain't even going to paint it. Like,
unless you have a huge pile of shame.
Shut up. But I like how they all look. But that has to deal with other things. So, also another thing with that is don't worry about the time sink. It's a hobby. Do it in your free time. This is meant to help you relax.
Yeah, for me is when I'm always painting is I always have to be doing something with my hands. It doesn't matter if I'm I don't watch TV, but if I'm watching YouTube, Netflix, listening to a podcast, an audiobook, I have to be doing something with my hands. What better thing to do with my hands than like right now I'm filing a whole bunch of metal Chinese models. It could be building a tank. Could be painting miniatures. I just have to be doing something with my hands, so the best thing to do with it is hobbying. Mainly because I have my own pile of shame. that I need to get through.
And then for me, I play video games on my computer online with my friends all the time, a lot. And now what I've started to do is, they want me online so they can talk because we're all really tight. It's a really tight knit group of friends. But so what I'll be like is, hey guys, I'll come on and chat. I'll sit over here at my painting station with my headphones on, and I'll be like, but I'm working on my miniatures. I'm not going to play any video games right now. But I'll sit here and chat with you and play my miniatures. Or I'll put on lore videos for whatever lore I'm into right now. Like I have a kick on right now. Let it be Warhammer 40K, Star Wars. Ooh, excuse me. Elder Scrolls, etc., etc., etc. I know some people that listen to audiobooks while they paint their miniatures. Sometimes I'll just listen to my music and paint a miniature, and I just get lost in working on my miniatures and my music, and it's cathartic and it's relaxing and pleasant.
Or if
you just get done, you just hanging.
If you and I have new armies we're building, we'll just sit down at the table and just build shit, just shoot the shit
About
and
all
do
kinds of stuff.
And that's another thing. Having a group of friends, like we all have a regulars chat for the store on Facebook, and we're constantly posting pictures up of what we're currently painting, especially right now when we're all locked down, and we can't really see each other, is we're constantly posting pictures of what we're painting, what we're putting together, what we're working on next.
We're asking questions. How do I build this list? What's a good idea?
Yeah.
What,
Like, there's a couple people I've been talking to. We were talking to starting to collect an old OG Warhammer Fantasy 6 edition armies. One, I really want to do that because that's going back to what really got me into this hobby. And plus, I love those models. I'm a big metal person. I also really like hand sculpted miniatures. So going back to those old times is very nostalgic for me. Also, I have a really bad luck because I think a lot of my Russians have broken weapons just because they're plastic. So that's a real downside to me. So I've been switching more to metals. So, but still shooting the shit, showing people your progress, seeing progress of other people really feed into the hobby again.
Yes.
And you really become a close set of friends. Where right now we're like, damn it, we really want to play and hang out at the store. This is what I'm working on now because we obviously can't.
Yeah. And like I hear from them all the time because my life used to be extremely busy with a full-time job, working out as a part-time job. Basically, I wasn't getting paid for it, and just the Marine Corps and life in general. And I work second shift, so I'm usually available at night when everybody's in bed, things like that. And I would get messages all the time, just, hey, when you coming in the store next? Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Hey, how you holding up? Blah, blah, blah. And I kind of dropped off the face of the earth from the store for a while because my mental health collapsed, which is, it happens to us. It happens to the best of us. It happens to all of us. And for me, the miniature, once I got that back under control, I was able to get back to my miniatures. And once I got back to my miniatures, it really did help me to improve my health, my mental health. And it helped me have something to do. Everybody knows the human psyche always feels better when you accomplish something, when you get something done. Well, here's a hobby that does that. You're not just sitting there putting piece by piece together in an endless stream. You are building a miniature. Boom, miniature is built, miniature is done. You're painting an army, or you're painting just one mini, just one, let's say. Boom, it's done. Problem solved.
Yeah,
and then you get that release of like, I did a thing.
I think Gordon, the owner of Adler Hobbies, put together one color a night. God damn it, you're going to sit there and you're at least going to paint the boots.
Yep. 20 dudes paint each of their boots.
And then shortly after those one color a night, you'll eventually have like my masochistic size of Napoleonic Russians.
Jesus.
Just one color a night, just unwind, paint.
Throw a book on, throw a TV show on, throw a movie on, whatever.
And I understand that's another way you can. This is another way to take it because there's some people who, obviously like both of us, enjoy the painting and hobby aspect of this and the playing aspect. You're gonna even if it's you listening to this, you're gonna be maybe like, okay, well, I'm only interested in painting. Maybe I'm only interested in playing. If you're just interested in painting, great. There's tons of miniatures to paint for you.
Thousands.
Like if you want to find a model, I can guarantee Reaper Miniatures makes that model. But I know some people where their biggest thing is I only like playing the game. I don't like painting. I just like sitting down with a bunch of good people and rolling dice and pushing models around. Which, kudos, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And they have hard times painting.
They don't have very steady hands or arthritis.
My hands are shit.
Oh, my hands are shaky too. And there's tricks to that and things like that, but that's a separate discussion. Maybe they don't they don't have really steady hands, so the paintbrush doesn't go well, the paint always goes on funny.
They just don't enjoy it. They don't have enough time in the day. They're busy working. They got family stuff to attend to. It's like, just try to do like previous just said, just try to do one color. Just work on one squad, one color a night. And not even one color all over the model. You know what? Tonight I at least want to paint the weapons. You know what? Tonight, I at least want to paint all the cloaks. This night, I just want to sit down and try to do all the hands and faces. I think we're kind of going off on a tangent because I don't remember the original question, but I hope you know what we're kind of getting at.
Well, we were kind of going off of getting into it and painting and everything, and that's all really important because you can sit down and look at a miniature and go, where do I start? Like, what do I do? Just find a spot. As he said, paint the boots. Paint all the boots.
Also, that's another, going back to your local game store, you can always ask advice. Like, our local game store has a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm. A lot of them do now.
Yeah. Like, we're really tight with the people down in Mass and up in Maine. As well. We're even part of their groups, and people are always showing off or asking advice on what to do, how to paint stuff. So it's honestly it's a very niche hobby, but you'll find it a very welcoming community
and broad community.
Yeah.
There's also Facebook pages for individual games that have people posting on them internationally.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many I'm part of at this point, either from me joining them or people inviting me to them. So I'm mainly a historical war gamer, and I can't tell you how many Napoleonic Facebook groups I'm a part of, or World War II.
Something like that, or all the sci-fi games I'm in on, and and then the other thing too is that there are hundreds of rule sets out there. And a lot of them, doesn't matter what miniatures you use. Like Star Breach, Rogue Stars,
I think that's a new thing for this day and age is model agnostic rule sets. I think the biggest ones are what we call the Osprey Blue Books. Osprey is a company that mainly publishes historical books. They have some fantasy and sci-fi. They also do some tabletop war games. But the Osprey Blue Books are these little thin 20 to 30 page books that are blue, hence the name. And a lot of them are model agnostic.
And the rules are quick, down and dirty, do the thing. And
Yeah.
You know, they give you some ideas in the book, little pictures of things that they've done, but with those games, you can use whatever miniatures you want. Lord knows what you're going to go up against. I had one time, I was playing Rogue Stars, and a guy showed up with a in-scale statue of a creature, like little statuette of a creature from XCOM Enemy Unknown. And that was his summoned monster.
That's
Like,
pretty-
or it was a summoned demon, I think, is what he was doing, because he was doing a cultist list, and it was his summoned demon, and it was literally an alien monster thing, the chrysalids from XCOM Enemy Unknown. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there with these kit bash things that were supposed to be space cops, or a space SWAT team that I called Aurora 4. You know, Aurora, Space Rainbow. And they were kit bashed from various GW parts. You know, they were Scout Marine bodies, Space Marine, Scout Marine, and Imperial Guard weapons. The one gun was from a completely separate completely other wargame. I don't remember where it came from. And I had Pig Iron Industries heads on them. I still got them kicking around somewhere. Or now I'm looking at doing another Rogue Stars unit that's made from a unit that RTLW makes. Because they're so cool. They're just so cool. And I want them. And I want to paint them.
I think we're really living in a right now a golden age for tabletop board games.
I would say so. Because the manufacturing process is getting a lot less expensive.
Not only that, but you're seeing. So back in our day,
Wow,
it was if it wasn't GW. It was Privateer Press.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two big ones. And now you're getting like tons of Kickstarters for different rule sets.
New model lines that
Yeah.
can stand in for certain rule sets. There are whole companies out there that don't even have a rule set. All they do is make cool looking models.
Yep.
And
And vice
different.
versa.
Yeah, they're, Osprey.
Yep.
They have some miniatures, but that's not really their thing.
I
Their
think
thing's the rule
really
sets.
well. I think they made someone wrote the rule set and another company made the models.
Oh yeah,
For-
I think
for-
it's North Star.
Yeah,
does
North
the
Star
minis.
Miniatures. But a lot of their rules, you can use whatever models you really want. So there's a plethora of stuff to get into. So I think looking in, I would say look to see what your local hobby store has, and then see what you would like from them there. If there's nothing near you, just you and a group of friends, we'll discuss on, well, do we want to play something sci-fi? Do we want to play something fantasy? Do we want to play historical?
What do we want to do? And if you can think it, there's a rule set. There's
absolutely.
miniatures. Judge Dredd has a rule set and miniatures. The comic book series that his came from, 2000 AD.
Strontium Dog, I believe it's called.
Yeah, Strontium Dog is the 2000 AD comic line. Star Wars has what? 1, 2, 3 now?
Yeah, Legion's the big. Legion and X-Wing are the biggest ones.
Yeah, because it's Legion, X-Wing, and Armada. So it's basically infantry, starfighters, and then fleets
Yeah.
of spaceships. Star Trek has one coming, doesn't it?
Star Trek has one out already, I think. I'm not sure.
Doctor Who has one. It's not very big, but it's there. There's all kinds of Weird War too, which is basically like if occultism or science got really wacky during World War II. There's 1,500 different science fiction games out there of various different flavors and types.
Yeah, it's just imagine of how simple you want the rule set to be, simple the rule set you want to be, and how like what you want to model. Because you can go with a system agnostic rule set like Rogue Stars or Star Breach, which have like this is a description of the army. Have fun. Or
Yeah.
you can go as strict as like Warhammer 40K.
Where you have to play these models to be this thing.
Yeah.
And they have what's called Weissewig rules, which is what you see is what you get. Which means the model is sitting there holding a plasma pistol, wearing carapace armor, and has grenades on his belt. In order to represent accurately that you spent the points for a trooper with a plasma pistol, grenades on his belt, and carapace armor.
Yeah. Like the army I'm making for Star Breach right now, I'm doing Adeptus Mechanis bits with Perry Miniatures, who normally does historical wargaming stuff. They initially started with Games Workshop, but doing Knights on Foot.
And when he says knights, he means like
Full
ye
play,
old code
yeah.
of chivalry for the
Crusades.
Crusades.
1400s to the 1500s knights. So it's just a matter of, obviously, I would honestly check what you have around you.
Mm-hmm.
See what they play. Most likely you get people who will have no issue setting up an army, or hell, they might even just pull you into the game. I know if there's people watching us play Bolt Action, I was like, hey, you want to pull dice?
Get them involved. They'll get
Yeah.
you involved. They'll find a way.
Because
Also, a lot of us have ADHD, and we'll just sit there and have a conversation while playing the game.
Yes.
Or ADD.
But if it's just you and your friends, like there's like we've been saying, there's a rule set for everything.
Literally everything.
Do you want to do only tanks? Great, Flames of War,
Team Yankee,
or Team Yankee if you want newer stuff. You want World War II? Dear God, there's a shit ton of rules for World War II.
And miniatures.
In miniatures.
World War One even has a rule set now.
Yep.
Korea has a rule set.
Actually, there's a couple others, but I digress.
Go lay down. So, just the gist of it, guys. Getting into it, it seems like a very daunting task, and it seems like a lot. And it seems like there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of money that needs to be spent, and everything like that. You can get it piecemeal. You don't need to walk in and buy a whole army right up front. You can buy one unit.
I think
and
you can
started.
get into Bolt Action in about $100.
Yeah.
And that's including the main rule book and just some units to start pushing around.
Absolutely. And the other thing, too, is a lot of these games are scalable. You can have... They usually use what's called a point system, which means every little unit or model you take is worth so many points, and you're only allowed to take up to X amount of points. And they're scalable that way. You know, they could be, like, a lot of games, they could do 500 points, 1,000 points, 1,500 points, to 5,000 points. That's a huge army, but it's theoretically possible. So you could start small. You could come in and just be like, hey man, I can only swing a 250-point army right now. You got a 250-point army that you can play against me? And they'll be like, yeah, sure, let's push some miniatures around and throw some dice.
One big thing for stores is something called an escalation league. Escalation leagues are fantastic for new players, and it's good for people who are into the hobby to get a new army started. So what an escalation league is okay, this month we're doing, I'll give you a Bolt Action point system, points, 500 points, which really for Bolt Action is 2 units, HQ, maybe a vehicle.
Or a weapon team.
Not a lot. That's pretty much your bare of what you need for Bolt Action. They're like, okay, next month we're going to jump up to 750. Add a few more models.
Maybe give that unit those weapon upgrades you couldn't afford in the points just a minute ago.
Next month, 1,000 points.
Add a tank.
Yeah.
Switch some weapons around.
Escalation leagues, if you see one going around, they're fantastic for getting into the game. Because you do not need a lot to begin with. Well, I say a lot for like Bolt Action and the smaller skirmish games. You don't need a whole lot.
Right. And there's always a place to start. And you don't, you don't have to get the army up front. Maybe you plan the army, right? You buy the rule books, you read them, you plan the army, and then you buy one unit and you get it done. And then you buy the next unit and you get it done. And then, after X amount of units, suddenly you have an army.
Yep.
Woo! Now you can expand that army. Now you can start another army. Now you can do all kinds of stuff. Like, the world is your oyster, as they used to say. I don't know if the kids still say that. Yeet. But you can start anywhere and you can do anything with this hobby. You really, really can.
All right, Rick. To finish this up, top 3 advice to give to a new player. What would be if you had a pedestal, what would be the 3 points on it?
Have fun. That's the goal. Top piece of advice I will give you, have fun. It's a hobby. It's a game. It's your friends. Have fun. Do not be afraid to make mistakes, to start out with things not looking perfect or great or even good, or even, is that a U.S. Marine infantryman? I don't know. I can't tell. Like, the paint's all whack. Whatever, it's painted. Don't be afraid to start out bad or make a mistake. Ask questions is my third one. Ask them. You will never know the answer if you don't even ask the question. If you don't know what question to ask, start somewhere. Ask something else. Maybe get an idea across that turns into the question. Hey, I'm trying to paint, for my instance, I'm trying to paint U.S. Marines. You say that to one of the guys at the store. Okay, man, well, what are you trying to paint with U.S. Marines? Infantry. Okay, what time period in the war? Late war. Post-Guadalcanal. Post-Battle of Guadalcanal. All right, buddy. Yeah. Here, come here. So that would be this time frame. We're going to Google it because, almighty Google, that's when you pull it up and you go, World War II U.S. Marine uniforms, and they'll help you Google it, and they'll be like, all right, so this is what it looks like, blah, 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 blah.
Those kids are what we
What do
call
you do?
plates. But we'll get into that another time.
That's another time. And then they'll be like, all right, well, here's what it looks like. And you'll be like, okay, all right, the uniform is olive drab, and their pouches are like a off khaki tan, and this, that, and the other. Okay, so I need to get those colors, right? And they'll be like, yeah, man, come here. And you go over to the paint rack, and they're like, oh, yeah. So I need khaki, I need, the olive drab, and I need this. Yeah, buddy. And then they'll be like, all right, also get a wash real quick, so you can add depth and blah, blah, blah. But that's painting techniques. That's later. Ooh, excuse me. And be like, oh, yeah, and you'll need these size brushes to do this. So when you started out, you didn't even know what question you were asking. But you were able to, because you went and talked to them, you were able to figure out the questions, and you learned answers to questions you didn't even know you had.
Again, going in, people are wicked friendly. People have no problems giving advice or helping you out.
So that would be my 3 pieces of advice.
Right.
Have fun. Do not be afraid to mess up or start out on a low place and they don't look great. Ask questions.
Yep. Mine were pretty much the same thing. I would probably... So have fun would be my number 1. Absolutely. Number 2, I think mine would be don't be afraid. In all honesty, this hobby, the learning curve is like a brick wall. Don't be afraid. Just go to your local game store. Ask questions. Just go. Don't be afraid about, starting out painting, like we said, you're not going to go for a golden demon or a crystal brush.
Those are painting awards, by the way.
Yes. Don't be afraid just to start and just post it up on your local Facebook group and say, hey, I just started painting. What do you guys think? And people will be more than happy to give you advice on what you could do differently. So instead of, I think my number 2 would be don't be afraid. And I would absolutely agree with you about ask questions. Ask questions about everything, especially down to asking questions during a game, like asking why do you need that role? What does your army do?
What does my army do?
Right. Just what advice would you give me for my army? What do you think I should get next? Like I said, this is a very welcoming. You'll find very welcoming community, and they'll be more than happy to help you out. I've met some great friends in this hobby
We've had them over to the house.
to do a lot of craft, a lot of hobbying, drink beer.
If you're old enough,
Yes.
eat pizza, or I don't know if you're vegan, eat a vegan pizza. Maybe not even a pizza, a salad. I some quinoa, couscous.
Yeah.
Oh, I love couscous.
But yeah, it's a very welcoming hobby, and just don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask away.
Including us. If you're listening to this, or you on our, we have a Facebook page. It's Table for Two Wargaming. We got a Twitter. It's at Table for Two War, right? And it's all spelled out.
You made it.
Yeah, I know I made it. I'm tired.
It'll be in the description below.
Yeah, it'll be in the description. You'll see access to all that. We're setting up an Instagram and everything, the YouTube channel, the whole 9 yards.
And trust me, even though we have an Instagram, we're not the greatest painters.
No, not by any stretch.
I have enough shit to paint that I do not care about every single detail of my model.
And I love doing details on my models, but I will also post up onto there some of my older miniatures that I still have kicking around that I painted a decade ago. Literally a decade ago. And then compare them to my newer stuff. So, hit us up. Got a question? Post it. And if you want to just ask it privately, the DMs, whatever. But I'm going to recommend post it up in the comments. Post it up publicly. Maybe there's somebody that has the same question as you, but didn't know they had it, or didn't know how to word it. And you were able to word it correctly, and now you help not just yourself, but somebody else that's interested in the hobby, or somebody else that's in the hobby. And you've been able to get more people to do it. And if you get more people to do it, now you have more people to play against.
Yeah, this is a hobby that I think definitely needs to start growing. Because it's definitely a deep pool to jump into.
Absolutely.
But I think the more welcoming people are, the easier it is to get into the hobby. We're also seeing right now a big leap also in hybrid games.
Yes.
Games that are a little more than board games, but not quite as much as
a war game.
A war game. A couple examples would be X-Men Star Wars X-Wing. The models are pre-painted. You literally just take stuff out of the box and you play. Another big one that I really like, and I actually have 3 armies for, is a Song of Ice and Fire miniature war game.
Which is Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that stuff literally comes straight out of the box. You don't have to paint it. A lot of people do paint them. But if you're going to a competitive scene in a tournament, painting's not required. It's literally just take the stuff out and play.
So there's all kinds of places to start. There's all kinds of things to do. And there's games of every size and combination and color.
Absolutely.
So do it. And we're all here to help. We're all here in the same hobby to hopefully see each other across the table as a friend and an opponent. Roll some dice and cry when all you roll is ones.
Which is normally me when I play Napoleonics.
Yeah. Or celebrate when you just roll straight 6s, which is me with a 6-sided die. But anything other than 6-sided die, I can't roll to save my life.
So always play
Rick,
a game with D10s against Rick.
Yeah, Rick, you need anything 9 or under on this 10-sided die. All 10s. Son of a...
I have seen it a couple times, and I still laugh.
Oh, still
But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to recommend a topic, please put it down below. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions or go into a topic, and hopefully not go on so many tangents like we did here.
Good luck with that. And we will eventually be posting up various how-tos, various reviews, various tutorials.
I just got a whole bunch of buildings in that I need to build. So I would like to actually start putting up some battle reports soon.
Absolutely.
So,
and how to plays.
Yes.
Here's bolt action. How do you play bolt action? What does that rule mean?
So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. and we'll see you next time.
Have fun. Have a good night.